Bruce Gernon is still trying to explain what happened to him on a routine flight over 40 years ago.
At exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we lifted off. I was flying with my dad, and we also had our business partner, Chuck Lafayette, in the back seat. I had made this flight at least a dozen times before, in the same airplane.
Pilots make routine flights over this area of the Atlantic Ocean every day. But Gernon claims there was something different about this trip.
It was around 1,500 feet of overcast with a light mist. So I climbed to 1,000 feet and started heading on our magnetic course toward Bimini.
From there, Gernon plans to fly northwest into Palm Beach International Airport. The estimated time of arrival in Florida is 4:20 p.m.
The first unusual thing that we noticed was this strange lenticular-shaped cloud that was a few miles offshore of Andros. It seemed to be hovering about 1,000 feet above the surface, and it was directly in front of our flight path.
Gernon pushes his plane to 321 kilometers per hour and heads for a patch of clear sky.
I was ascending at 1,000 feet per minute, and the cloud appeared to be ascending at the same rate as me. When I looked to the sides of me, I couldn't believe what I saw. This tiny cloud had expanded into a giant sickle-shaped squall.
Another massive storm is developing in the distance. Gernon is trapped.
There was this huge valley in between the two storms. Then, as I started heading toward it, I noticed these two anvil heads formed, one on each side of the two storms. And then the two anvil heads met and formed a huge tunnel.
Gernon is flying through an area some claim is associated with mysterious disappearances, a place called the Bermuda Triangle. Scientists say there's nothing particularly special about this region. Ships and planes go missing all around the world, the victims of weather and mechanical failures that send them to the bottom of the ocean. But some are convinced that here, something more mysterious is to blame. Michael Preisinger lived in the heart of the Bermuda Triangle for 2 years.
In my research, I found at least 50 unsolved cases. And who knows how many cases exist above and beyond those that are known.
The triangle is usually defined as the area between Bermuda, Miami, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. The region is prone to bad weather and covers some of the deepest areas of the Atlantic Ocean. Meteorologist David Paris has studied weather effects for 25 years. He agrees with most scientists that bad weather may explain why many planes and ships vanish without a trace.
If you looked at Lloyd's of London, who usually insures a lot of these ships, they will tell you is that the losses that are experienced in the Bermuda Triangle area is no different from than any other area of the world. Period.
One of the most enduring stories of the Bermuda Triangle is the disappearance of the USS Cyclops in 1918.
To date, that's the largest loss of life on board a U.S. Navy vessel that's unexplained.
Marvin Barish has a personal connection to the tragedy.
309 people lost their lives on board the USS Cyclops when she disappeared. My great-uncle, Lawrence Merkel, was a fireman on board the ship at the time the ship was lost.
Christened in 1910, The USS Cyclops was a cargo ship, used to transport fuel during World War I.
It wasn't a small boat. It was a ship 165 meters long. Back then, considered a huge ship.
In January 1918, the Cyclops was given the job of going to Brazil. The Navy had an arrangement with the U.S. Shipping Board for the ship to go and pick up a cargo of manganese ore.
Sometime between February 14th and February 16th, 1918, the fully loaded ship departed for the United States.
Cyclops was actually supposed to go back to Baltimore, Maryland from Brazil. Instead, she stops off at Bridgetown, Barbados. The ship took on a cargo of coal, and beyond that, there wasn't any fanfare. She was essentially just leaving March 4th and was anticipated to arrive back at Baltimore on the 13th of March.
The Cyclops was last observed leaving the harbor in Barbados.
Nothing is heard from the ship. There's no sightings. There's no radio communication.
The ship was never seen again.
The Navy engaged in the largest search for a vessel that had ever been undertaken. Vessels large and small were called into action. Nobody ever found anything. No piece of wreckage, no oil slick, nothing floating on the water, no trace of anything. The loss of the Cyclops, as far as the newspaper reporting alone, probably in our lifetimes would compare to the 9/11 events. It was difficult for somebody to understand how such a massive vessel, so many people, so much volume of metal could just disappear off the face of the earth.
Almost 100 years later, the Cyclops still fuels speculation about mysterious forces at play in the Triangle.
Can you imagine? The USS Cyclops, 165 meters long, even bigger than this ship, disappears without a trace on its way through the Bermuda Triangle.
But there may be a natural phenomenon that explains how a ship like the Cyclops could vanish in an instant. It's called a rogue wave.
You could easily be faced with a wall of water that's between 20 and 30 meters high. This will last for a glorious 2-3 seconds, and then it's gone.
Under the right conditions, seemingly harmless waves can turn into deadly walls of water in an instant. The USS Cyclops would have been especially susceptible to a rogue wave.
The Cyclops had a history of doing some severe rolls. On one occasion, she rolled 50 degrees in one direction and about 46 degrees the other direction. Under normal circumstances, that's quite a bit for most vessels.
There have been numerous events where a ship was hit by a rogue wave and it disappeared essentially in a matter of seconds.
If a rogue wave had hit the Cyclops, I believe she would have quickly rolled and that she would have probably slipped below the surface and would eventually wind up at the seabed.
The Cyclops may have gone down over the Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest part of the Atlantic Ocean.
The fact that nothing has ever been found from the ship is probably a good indicator that that's where she came to rest.
Rogue waves may explain why some ships disappear without a trace in the Bermuda Triangle. They've been identified as the possible cause for disappearances all over the world. Some speculate the phenomenon was behind the sinking of the Ocean Ranger, 314 kilometers off the east coast of Canada. It was one of the largest semi-submersible oil rigs on the planet, built to withstand the most punishing weather. But on the evening of February 14th, 1982, a huge wave slammed into the rig. Within hours, the massive vessel had sunk to the bottom. All 84 men aboard lost their lives.
The ocean is a very unforgiving mistress. You head out to sea and people never hear from you again.
Rogue waves certainly can't explain the events unfolding in front of Bruce Gernon high over the Bermuda Triangle. In 1970, he claims he was trapped between two storms with a strange hole in the clouds as his only escape route.
I went to full power as I dove down, aiming for the center of the tunnel. Instantly, these strange lines formed all around the walls of the tunnel. At the same time, I felt this strange sensation. I was zero gravity. But this had a different feeling to it. It had a feeling of also hydroplaning, like I was skidding forward. I didn't dare get off course, not even a fraction.
Gernon's father desperately tries to contact Miami.
Miami radio, Miami radio.
So my dad starts fumbling with the electronic navigational instruments, and he couldn't come up with our position because all three of them were malfunctioning. Even the magnetic compass was slowly rotating counterclockwise, continuously. The main thing that's going through my head is just to fly the airplane and maintain the course, keep the wings level, and just try to stay safe.
Gernon's claimed navigational problems are similar to those described in the most famous of all Bermuda Triangle mysteries, the case of the lost Navy squadron known as Flight 19.
The most peculiar thing about Flight 19 is 5 American Navy planes disappeared without any trace.
We don't have all the answers for Flight 19. It sits there rattling around in the back of our minds. What happened? What happened? What happened to Flight 19? We don't know.
Almost 25 years to the day before Bruce Gernon's flight, the 14 men of Flight 19 prepare for a mission over the same waters. A 5-plane squadron departed from Fort Lauderdale on a short bombing practice.
Flight 19 was an absolutely routine mission.
Retired U.S. Navy pilot instructor Lieutenant David White was a senior flight instructor at the base. He was training pilots on the ground the day the planes of Flight 19 disappeared.
That was the beginning of my naval career, and there's me.
I think there's an explanation for everybody that disappeared out there. I don't think that there's a mysterious force disrupting compasses and so forth.
The squadron was flying the TBM Avenger bomber.
The Avenger was really a tried and true airplane. It was a steady airplane, and we never had any problems with it.
Flight 19 is cleared for takeoff at 2:10 in the afternoon under partly cloudy skies.
The flight went out to what we call the Hen and Chicken Islands. It's about 60 miles east, and they dropped miniature smoke bombs on a sunken freighter that was out there.
At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Fort Lauderdale Tower picked up conversations from the Flight 19 crew.
I've got one more bomb.
The squadron was expected to proceed due north towards the island of Great Sail Cay. Most flight instructors on the base knew the mission by heart.
I could fly that route without a chart even. I knew that pretty well, and I knew where the checkpoints were, so that I knew that we were supposed to be over a certain little island at a certain time.
Almost 2 hours into the flight, a panicked voice comes over the radio. The squadron is lost.
see land. We seem to be off course.
The squadron leader announced that suddenly he has problems with the compass and doesn't know exactly where he is.
Powers, what does your compass read? What does your compass read? I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn.
Another pilot in the area tries to contact the squadron leader.
This is FT-74. Please identify yourself so someone can help you.
Can you have Miami or someone turn on their radar gear and pick us up? I'm sure now neither of my compasses are working.
Legend has it that other navigators have experienced similar compass malfunctions.
I did some research to see if there were other cases of compass deviations in this area. I quickly found that Christopher Columbus reported compass deviations in his ship logs 500 years ago.
Malfunctions like these have been reported by airmen and sailors the world over.
Charles Lindbergh, who was the first man to fly over the Atlantic, also reported compass deviations in this area.
Charles Lindbergh's compass was slowly spinning counterclockwise, just like mine. And he was only like 30 miles away from the same spot that I was.
Some think deviations similar to these may have caused the commander of Flight 19 to second-guess his location.
He radios that he has lost his orientation and may be located somewhere over the Florida Keys.
I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm not in the Keys, but I don't know how far down.
But the Keys are over 250 kilometers away from their assumed coordinates.
Flight 19, your transmissions are fading. Something is wrong. What is your altitude?
I am lost. Do you read me?
As Flight 19 slowly unravels, a rescue mission is mobilized, and ships in the area are alerted to keep a lookout. Calls to base get more panicked.
We didn't go far enough east. We may have to ditch any minute. I suggest fly until we run out of gas.
Afterwards, radio communications get more and more faint, and this was the last thing you heard from the planes.
For the next 5 days, search and rescue crews covered more than 500,000 square kilometers of open ocean.
We were searching for debris that had broken up from the airplanes. We felt that that is really all that we could look for, and we didn't find anything.
Despite a massive search, no trace of Flight 19 was ever found. Theories about Flight 19 vary from human error to running out of fuel.
Miami, can someone turn on their radar gear and pick us up?
The weird thing is, every pilot training down there knew it was sort of a standing rule. If you get lost, fly west.
Faulty compass readings could have caused the squadron to fly out to sea instead of returning to land.
Keith, can you place the aircraft on runway 8 right in Miami, please?
Okay, 8 right coming up.
Over 60 years later, pilot Greg Darrow is retracing the steps of the lost squadron in a state-of-the-art flight simulator.
Okay, so we're going to take off of Miami 8 right. This full flight simulator is as real as it gets. It is just like flying the airplane. The number one thing we use this device is to teach pilots to trust their instrumentation. Pilots have to trust what they're seeing and believe what the aircraft is telling them instrumentation-wise versus what they're feeling.
Today, aircraft like the 747-400 have state-of-the-art navigational systems.
Too low, terrain.
Pilots can track their position down to the meter.
An older aircraft, the pilots must spend more time trying to determine where they're at by focusing on what the instrumentation is telling them.
Using only the basic instruments available to the pilots of Flight 19, Darrow will test the theory that malfunctioning compasses could have doomed the mission.
At that time, they had a turn and slip indicator, they had a gyroscopic compass, and they had an attitude indicator and an altimeter.
Each plane has two compasses, a gyroscopic compass powered by the engine and a magnetic compass guided by the Earth's magnetic field. Failure of one of these could create confusion.
So, Johan, could you fail that compass for me? I'm looking down here, I'm thinking I'm flying on a heading of 050, 045. But look at what my wet compass is saying. My wet compass is saying now that I'm already 30 degrees off of that heading and growing.
To replicate what Flight 19 reported, they knock out both compasses.
Now your reference to north, south, east, and west is greatly diminished, and you'd have to try to reference the sun. You'd have to try to reference a piece of land. At that point, you're in some real trouble.
I'm sure now that neither of my compasses are working.
With the sun going down over the open ocean, Flight 19 was doomed.
It's very easy to imagine the flight being intercepted by one of those storms that pops up frequently in those areas, and then flying further out into the Atlantic and disappearing.
I've flown in and out of the Bermuda Triangle throughout my career and have never had an incident or anything strange happen.
The U.S. Navy doesn't even recognize the Bermuda Triangle as an official designation and agrees there is nothing out of the ordinary going on. But questions still remain about Flight 19.
My theory is that the compasses were out and that they ran out of gas, banged up the airplanes severely, and probably did not survive crashing into the ocean.
While most label the disappearance of Flight 19 as nothing more than a tragic accident, it was the single most important event in perpetuating the myth of the Bermuda Triangle. But there is another region of the planet where scientists have identified a very real magnetic phenomenon, wreaking havoc on navigation. In 1958, Dr. James Van Allen detected a strange weakness in the Earth's magnetic field 200 kilometers over the planet. Astrophysicist Sten Odenwald believes we have a much clearer understanding of this region today.
The orbits of satellites over time were able to map out that this is a region of space in orbit around the Earth where computer systems had more flaky behavior.
It's called the South Atlantic Anomaly, and it stretches from the west coast of South America all the way to Africa.
With satellites that orbit through that, the satellite operator has to be very careful and monitor the satellite condition to make sure that the satellite isn't acting in an anomalous way.
Astronauts passing through the anomalies see strange flashes of light. Computers sometimes crash. And spacecraft flying through the anomaly are bombarded with radioactive materials.
These things, when they slam into circuit boards and human tissue, can cause genetic defects. They can cause binary data to be scrambled.
Over 50 years later, NASA is still dealing with the effects of this dangerous patch of space. But there is no evidence that the same physics are at play in the Bermuda Triangle.
As scientists, we know that there are sweet spots on the Earth, but when you get near the Bermuda Triangle latitudes, there's simply nothing there. It's actually a fairly boring place in the magnetic field of the Earth.
Even though there's no evidence of anything strange happening, Bruce Gernon claims something unexplained happened to him and his father. Flying through a tunnel of clouds over the Bermuda Triangle, he and his father can't figure out their position.
Come
don't have us on radar? What do you mean you don't have us on radar?
He was raising hell, and I could see he's like going into a state of panic.
Miami Air Traffic Control supposedly can't locate the aircraft anywhere. It's as if the plane doesn't even exist.
And then another amazing thing happens. Instantly, these long lines form all around the airplane, and I look back, and I watch the tunnel collapse. The Miami radar controller comes back on the radio, and he's yelling now. He's all excited. And he says he's got an airplane directly over Miami Beach.
Gernon is confused. By his calculation, the plane should still be over the Atlantic about 130 kilometers east of Miami.
At first, my eyes couldn't really focus on the land below me. But then they came into focus, and I could see I was directly over Miami Beach.
They land without further incident. According to Gernon, they are almost 30 minutes ahead of schedule.
After we had landed, I noticed that the flight had only taken 48 minutes. We compared all watches, and all concurred that it only took 48 minutes.
Gernon claims he traveled about 400 kilometers. That translates into an airspeed of over 500 kilometers per hour. Impossible for the aircraft he was flying. Gernon still can't explain the mysterious loss of time. Skeptics say extraordinary claims like this require extraordinary evidence that they even happened. David Paris has devoted hundreds of hours trying to explain Gernon's story.
We have all the dates, we have the times, we have the fueling tickets, his flight route. We're not looking at time travel here, but we're looking at a physical force.
A strange force that Paris believes is at work in thunderstorms all over the world.
You have antimatter being generated in these clouds. You have electrical fields being generated, and suddenly the whole voltage and amperage is getting totally out of hand. Get all these things in just the right order, and you got yourself an incredibly powerful storm.
Paris believes these storms are so powerful that they can cause a warp in the fabric of space. A phenomenon he claims could explain what happened to Bruce Gernon. Most consider Paris's claims difficult to believe. If these storms were generating enough energy to affect space and time, satellites would have detected it.
Even if they lasted for only a millisecond or so, such an event would be easily recognizable by satellite instrumentation, and nothing like that has ever been observed.
While scientists have discounted Paris' theory about space warp, they have found that some thunderstorms generate enormous bursts of energy. In 1994, a satellite probing deep space made a very surprising discovery.
We were looking out into the universe to find gamma ray sources, but then they realized some of those sources were actually coming from the Earth itself.
Gamma rays, the most powerful bursts of energy in the universe, were coming from certain types of thunderstorms on our own planet.
They saw all manner of amazing phenomena going on that reached all the way up into the stratosphere, some 50 to 60 kilometers above the top of the lightning storm. We know, for instance, that there are these things called supercell lightning storms. These are very, very intense, large systems. They actually produce pairs of electrons and antimatter electrons. which then combine to produce gamma ray bursts. And those gamma ray bursts we can actually see in space.
Paris' theory hinged on the idea that this power is multiplied when two storms converge.
When you get two thunderstorms that go side by side, each one of these are generating a current flow. And when they cross, they form a hole.
Paris still thinks this phenomena could explain the tunnel Gernon claims to have encountered in 1970. He may be the only researcher to believe this theory, but he's determined to collect the data to prove it.
Bruce!
Hey, David.
How you doing?
Hey,
it's good to see you again.
Today, Paris and Bruce Gernon are teaming up to search the skies, looking for conditions similar to those Gernon claims he saw in 1970. Pilot Richard Marks has agreed to fly them.
How close do we want to get?
I would advise not any closer than 10 miles.
Okay.
Only because a lot of gamma ray emission, you know, if we're flying in at 6,000 feet, we're going to need to be cautious.
The outer bands of Tropical Storm Debbie are just starting to hit the west coast of Florida.
We've got tops up here to about 52,000 feet. We got one off at Key West at 63. And these are the kind of thunderstorms that we want to kind of go after.
What we really want to do is try to go where there's two cells close to each other, and they're both expanding. If they form an anvilhead on the top, it'll meet on the top, and then a tunnel will form in between the cells.
This one piece of equipment that we have will kind of allow us to target close to the thunderstorm. It's a gamma ray indicator. This can allow us to pinpoint our target, which is an opening, a tunnel, that would be formed by the intense thunderstorm activity. This thing's drawing a lot of energy.
They decide to head due west towards the Gulf of Mexico, aiming for an area of high storm activity.
And Rick, go ahead and go. We're going to taxi across the runway for you.
Oh, okay, that'd be fine.
This is a DC magnetometer. What it will do is measure differences of electrical fields, and this would allow us to actually pinpoint the sweet spot to look for your hole in the cloud.
They set their sights on a particularly strong storm cell.
Well, Naples is 1 mile and rain shower thunderstorm, 1,500 foot broken. It's good. Well, not good, but good.
While Paris believes these storms can initiate a rip in the fabric of space, a more logical explanation, Gernon simply flew into a storm, became disoriented, and lost track of time.
Many times you can misinterpret the visual cues you see out the window. A cloud at an angle may give you the sense that there's a horizon there, but it's not a horizon. Things could appear closer than they are. I've had lights that appeared very close and turned out to be as far away as stars.
The conditions over South Florida are beginning to deteriorate.
As it's pushing across here, there are a lot of excessive amounts of water vapor. The air is extremely unstable.
A thunderstorm is brewing. The FAA wants to know why they are flying in such dangerous conditions.
November 27 Whiskey Lima, the intent of today's flight is storm chasing?
Yeah, it's just northwest of TNT.
Are you going to be operating inside 20 miles of that thunderstorm?
Within 10.
As they get closer to the storm, Paris begins to pick up elevated levels of gamma rays.
See how it's building up here? Got 12 gamma rays.
Oh, yeah. The bar graph's still going up, huh?
Energy's increasing as we are approaching these thunderstorms.
These storms are quite large, so they're all kind of mixing together.
I'm headed right for what I call a saddle. You got two storms. There's a low depression in between it, no activity. Is reflected on the radar, but sometimes it can be quite turbulent in there.
And you see like a valley in between some cells?
Absolutely.
Can we run parallel to that so that we can get a look outside on the side windows here?
Once again, they get a warning from air traffic control.
November 27 Whiskey Lima. We've had reports earlier today of lightning and icing inside those storms. They may be producing some hail, which can be expelled up to 20 miles out.
I'm just about to encroach the edge of that precipitation band.
Okay, I guess it's time to start looking for any kind of holes.
Yeah. I can see visually a gap.
The conditions are similar to what Gernon claims he saw before the tunnel formed in 1970.
Gamma rays are increasing here. We're up to 16 now. We got lightning off to the left.
Which way you want to go? Away from it?
Away from it, yeah.
Despite a desire to push on, it's not worth risking their lives. They call off the expedition.
If we would have gone another mile towards the top of that cloud, we would have got hit. And that kind of voltage could be disastrous, not only knocking out the equipment, could damage an engine. In many cases, it blows the wingtips off the airplane.
So we've got as good as we're going to get.
They managed to capture data, but gamma ray readings from today's expedition are nothing unusual. Levels match those taken by NASA in storms all over the planet. Astrophysicist Sten Odenwald has dismissed any notion that gamma radiation could be the reason some ships and planes go missing in the region known as the Bermuda Triangle. But there's absolutely no doubt that something strange is happening in another part of the world, high above the Earth's surface.
Some satellites report memory upsets and device latch-ups in their computers. It's a well-known effect. It's been measured for several decades now and mapped out very accurately.
Unlike the Bermuda Triangle, this is one of Earth's proven oddities. NASA has discovered an area of weakness in the magnetosphere surrounding the planet.
The magnetic field of the Earth is created by currents that flow in the core of the Earth.
This shield protects the Earth from solar radiation.
Solar particles are charged, and so once they meet up with Earth's magnetic field lines, they flow around and get sort of vented out the backside and tend to avoid Earth's atmosphere. If these particles were to directly collide with Earth's atmosphere, Earth would start to lose its atmosphere. That's probably what happened to Mars, which doesn't have a magnetic field and has almost no atmosphere left after all these billions of years.
Scientists have learned that the magnetic field protecting our planet is weakening.
Over the last 100 years, the strength of Earth's magnetic field has declined by about 1% or so. And this decline has been very steady for several hundred years.
In the South Atlantic anomaly, the process is happening 10 times faster than the rest of the planet. As the magnetic shield continues to weaken, modern life as we know it may be in jeopardy.
It looks to be the largest natural disaster that the country could face.
As Earth's magnetic shield weakens, the planet will become more susceptible to solar storms.
It helps the atmosphere protect itself from incoming particles from the sun and elsewhere, which is sort of a side benefit of having a magnetic field on a planet. But it turns out that Earth's magnetic field is important for our planet to have an atmosphere and to be hospitable to life.
Life on Earth has survived major magnetic fluctuations in the past. But that was before modern civilization. Before digital technology. Before powered flight. Before electricity became the glue that holds society together. John Kappenman has advised the U.S. government on how to safeguard the electrical system from solar storms.
The power grid that we've created has in essence, become an enormous antenna to these disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field.
In the past, the sun has ejected blasts of energy 10 times the size of Earth. Experts like Kappenman believe it's only a matter of time before the Earth is hit by one of these massive storms.
These are the equivalent of electromagnetic hurricanes that can fall across the entire planet.
We now understand pretty well what the impacts can be like, and that extends everywhere from interfering with our electric power grid to the satellites that validate our ATM transactions.
If we experience this firsthand, it could mean the end of society.
Power grids could crash all over the world.
If you take electric power supply away, virtually all other critical infrastructures will either immediately or within a short period of time also collapse. Within a matter of just a few hours, all drinking water systems, all perishable foods, perishable medications. We could be experiencing, as a country, in excess of 1 million fatalities within the first week or less after a widespread long-term power grid blackout. The events that unfolded at the Fukushima nuclear power plant very much fit a scenario that could unfold for a severe space weather event. In the case of a global event, there's something like 400 of these nuclear plants located throughout the world. There's a very thin veneer between order and chaos. If you lose electric power supply, you begin to lose the order that is brought to society.
Experts like Kappenman are convinced it's a case of when, not if.
In a sense, we're somewhat playing a game of Russian roulette with the sun.
While scientists try and come up with a solution to the real-world problem of solar storms, people like Bruce Gurnan continue to be intrigued by the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle.
Right after the event took place, I wasn't able to really comprehend what happened. And neither were my passengers.
As long as there are unexplained phenomena in the world, the mythology will live on.
We do need a sense of the mysterious. Humans have always had that, from as far back as you want to go in the written record and beyond.
I think it's a lot easier to put a label, such as the Bermuda Triangle, as the prime suspect for any kind of crime or any kind of loss. It's a lot easier than actually looking for the facts, doing a real investigation, and not just falling back on myth.